6 arm day exercises to grow biceps and triceps fast. All right, let's talk arms, not the I do curls once a week and wonder why nothing's growing kind of arms. We're talking sleeves getting tight, veins starting to show. My friends are starting to ask if I lift kind of arms. If you want bigger biceps and triceps, there's no magic powder, no secret Instagram trick. It's just smart training, heavy enough to matter, controlled enough to hit the muscle, and consistent enough to make your shirts angry at you. So here are 6 exercises you need on arm day. 1. Barbell biceps curl, the bread and butter of arm growth. Stand tall, elbows pinned, and curl like you mean it. No swinging, no I'm just using momentum because I'm a kinetic genius. Control the weight, both up and down. 2. Incline dumbbell curl. Here's the sneaky one. It stretches your biceps in the bottom position, forcing more muscle recruitment. Think of it as telling your arms, surprise, you're not safe at the bottom anymore. 3. Cable rope hammer curl. Targets the brachialis and brachioradialis for thickness and forearm development. It also makes you look like you know what you're doing in the gym, which is priceless. 4. Close grip bench press. Big triceps builder. Push heavy, elbows tucked, chest up. Remember, we're training triceps, not reenacting a flared elbow bench press disaster. 5. Overhead dumbbell triceps extension. Gets that long head of the triceps fully stretched. Think hands to the ceiling, but keep your elbows from drifting out like you're trying to fly away. 6. Cable rope pushdown. End your session with these to pump the triceps so much you'll have to walk sideways through doorways, at least in your head. Wrap up. Hit each of these for 3-4 hard sets, 8-15 reps, twice a week. Track your weights, add reps over time, and watch your arms transform. And remember, the only people who say arm day doesn't matter are the ones wearing hoodies all summer. All right, let's get into this. Because when people hear prioritize form and control, they often think it's just some boring safety first PSA from their high school gym teacher. This isn't about being overly gentle with the weights or babying your muscles. It's about actually getting the growth you came for. Here's the cold, hard reality. Your biceps and triceps don't care how much weight is on the bar if you're not putting tension on them. They're not watching you in the mirror thinking, wow, he's curling 60-pound dumbbells. That's impressive. They literally just respond to mechanical tension, the stretch and contraction under load. If you're using your hips, lower back, and momentum to throw that weight up, you've basically turned a perfectly good biceps curl into a weird full-body swing dance that trains almost nothing, except maybe your chiropractor's bank account. Think of it like this. Muscle fibers respond to work. That means the actual movement of shortening and lengthening the muscle under control. When you cheat through the movement, you rob the muscle of that work. Sure, the weight goes up faster, but your muscle growth, it stays exactly where it is. Here's the kicker. You also massively increase your injury risk because you're loading joints and connective tissue in ways they were never designed to handle. One bad rep, and suddenly you're learning what elbow tendinopathy means. And trust me, that's not a fun vocabulary word. Now, this doesn't mean you move the weight at a snail's pace and flex in the mirror after every rep like you're auditioning for a slow-motion montage. It means control. Lower the weight slowly enough that you can feel the muscle working. 2 to 3 seconds on the way down is plenty. On the way up, lift with purpose, not just velocity. This isn't a race, it's an assault on your muscle fibers. Your job is to make them feel like they just got hit with a week's worth of hard labor in 45 seconds. One of the biggest lies in the gym is that using strict form means you have to go light. Nope, you can lift heavy and keep control. You just have to earn that heavier weight by dominating the lighter one first. If you can curl 25-pound dumbbells with perfect form for 12 reps, then move to 30s and do the exact same thing. What you don't do is jump straight to 50s, flail around like a malfunctioning windmill, and call it intensity. That's not intensity. That's just enthusiasm without results. And here's a little mental hack. Imagine the only thing you're allowed to move during a curl is your forearm. Your elbow is locked in place like it's bolted to your rib cage. Your shoulder stays still. Your torso stays still. The only thing that moves is your lower arm bending and straightening. Same idea for triceps. Your upper arm stays locked. Your elbow acts like a hinge, and you only move that hinge. Every other part of your body should basically be useless during the lift. The more stable everything else is, the more the target muscle is forced to do its job. Another thing no one wants to hear, if you're not controlling the eccentric, the lowering phase, you're throwing away half the gains. Studies show, yes, real boring science studies, that the eccentric phase is just as important, if not more important, for muscle growth. Dropping the weight like it's on fire? Congratulations, you just skipped the most anabolic half of the rep. Every time you lower the weight under control, you're tearing muscle fibers in the exact way your body needs to rebuild them bigger. That's the whole game. And I get it. Strict form doesn't always feel as cool. It doesn't get you those looks from across the gym because you're moving mountain-sized weights. But you know what it does get you? Measurable growth. In 6 months, your arms will look like you've been secretly doing pushdowns and curls for a living, while the momentum lifters are still trying to figure out why their sleeves feel exactly the same as last year. Here's the truth bomb. If you can't feel the target muscle working, you're not training it. You can think you're doing biceps curls, but if you feel it in your front delts or lower back, then congratulations, you just invented a brand new exercise that grows, not your biceps. Your ego doesn't grow your arms. Precision does. So the next time you grab that barbell or dumbbell, check your form like your gains depend on it, because they do. Pin your elbows, keep your torso stable, control the rep up and down, and focus on making the target muscle do all the work. Once you've mastered that, then start loading it heavier over time. That's how you build arms that make people ask, dude, what program are you on, instead of, bro, do you even lift? If you can't do it right, you can't do it heavy. And if you can't do it heavy, you can't do it big. Start with control. Keep the tension where it belongs, and watch how fast your arms start looking like they belong in a superhero costume without you having to swing a single rep. All right, so here's the thing. A lot of lifters train arms like they're making a peanut butter sandwich. They just slap something on one side, call it good, and totally ignore the other. And then they wonder why their arms look decent from one angle, but kind of meh from another. If you want full arm development, that bicep peak when you flex, that triceps horseshoe when you straighten your arm, you've got to hit the muscles from both ends of their range. That means movements where the muscle is fully stretched and movements where it's fully contracted. You can't just live in one end of the playground. If all you ever do is chase the squeeze, you're missing out on the growth potential from the stretch. And if all you ever do is stretch, you're missing the metabolic stress and peak contraction benefits. You need both, and they work together like peanut butter and jelly, except here it's stretch and squeeze, and instead of a tasty sandwich, you get bigger arms. Let's start with the stretch side of the story. When a muscle is stretched under load, like during an incline dumbbell curl for biceps or an overhead triceps extension, you create this huge mechanical tension in the fibers that just lights up the growth response. It's not comfortable. In fact, it kind of feels like your muscle is about to tap out and go home early, but that's exactly where the magic happens. A loaded stretch forces more fibers to get involved because you're challenging them at their weakest point. It's like telling your muscle, you thought you could just chill here at the bottom? Nope, now you're going to work. The problem is, most people don't like training in the stretch because it's harder, and it doesn't look as cool. The weights move slower, your face looks like you're smelling something awful, and you can't stack the plates like you can on easier exercises. But if you skip it, you're skipping a huge chunk of your growth potential. In bonus, training the stretch helps make the rest of your range feel easier, so your contractile strength improves too. Now, the contraction side is the opposite. Think preacher curls for biceps or rope pushdowns for triceps, where you lock the muscle into its shortest, tightest position and squeeze like you're trying to crush a walnut inside your elbow. That's metabolic stress territory. You're basically trapping blood in the muscle, building up all these fun little byproducts that your body responds to by saying, okay, fine, we'll make this muscle bigger so you can stop torturing it. The burn you feel, that's your body's way of telling you it's working. And yes, it's unpleasant. And yes, that's the point. The trick is balancing the two. If you go all in on contraction work, you get a great pump, but you'll be missing out on the stretch-mediated hypertrophy. If you go all in on stretch work, you get good tension, but you miss that pump-driven stimulus that also drives growth. This is why a complete arm day might look like incline curls, stretch, pause, barbell curls, mid-range, preacher curls, contraction for biceps, in overhead extensions, stretch, close grip bench, mid-range, pushdowns, contraction for triceps. That's how you check every box. And let's be real, some of you are doing the right exercises, but not actually using them the way they're intended. You grab the dumbbells for incline curls, but then you cut the bottom range short because it feels awkward. Congratulations, you just turned your stretch movement into a mid-range movement, and now you're wondering why you're not growing. Or you do rope pushdowns, but let the weight slam back up without squeezing at the bottom. That's not a contraction, that's just a triceps cameo appearance. You've got to actually commit to the position. Another point. The more you train both ends of the range, the more resistant you become to plateaus. Why? Because muscles adapt specifically to the stimulus you give them. If you're always training in one range, your body becomes efficient there, and growth slows down. But if you're regularly forcing it to adapt in both the stretched and contracted positions, you keep it guessing. You're basically telling your arms, you can't get comfortable. You're going to have to be strong everywhere. That's how you avoid the dreaded "my arms haven't grown in a year" problem. This also has a bonus benefit for injury prevention. Training through the stretch improves the resilience of your tendons and connective tissue because they get used to handling load in those end ranges. And strong connective tissue means fewer annoying aches that keep you from training hard. Same with contraction training. It improves neuromuscular control, meaning you're better at actually activating the muscle you're trying to train instead of just kind of hoping it kicks in. Here's the reality check. The guys and girls with the best arms aren't just doing endless sets of curls or pushdowns. They're deliberately picking movements that challenge the muscle from multiple angles and ranges. They're making sure the long head of the triceps is stretched overhead, that the short head of the biceps is squeezed on preacher curls, that they're not skipping out on those painful bottom stretches. And they're doing it week after week, not just when they feel like it. So the next time you plan your arm workout, ask yourself, am I getting both a deep stretch and a hard squeeze? If the answer is no, you're leaving gains on the table. Fix it. Add in a stretch movement and a contraction movement for each muscle group. Do them properly, no half reps, no ego lifting, no cutting corners, and watch what happens. Your arms will not only look bigger, they'll look rounder, fuller, and more three-dimensional. You'll go from guy with decent arms to guy who clearly has an arm program. Because at the end of the day, anyone can curl, but not everyone can build arms that look like they belong in a superhero movie. That's the difference between just doing the exercise and doing the exercise in the right range, in the right way, for the right reason. Stretch, squeeze, grow, repeat. Progressive overload. You've heard the term. You've probably nodded your head at it in a YouTube video or seen it on an Instagram post with some guy flexing in bad lighting. But here's the problem. Most people say they're doing it, and they're absolutely not. Progressive overload isn't lifting heavy sometimes or going hard when you feel good. It's a planned, relentless, and very slightly uncomfortable process of making your muscles do more over time. And here's the truth. If you're not asking your muscles to do more, why would they change? Your body isn't in the business of giving you bigger arms just for showing up. It's in the business of efficiency, which means keeping things exactly as they are unless you give it a good reason to adapt. Progressive overload is that reason. Now, overload doesn't always mean slapping an extra 20 pounds on the bar every week. If that were the case, we'd all be curling refrigerators by now. There are actually several ways to progressively overload. Add weight, the obvious one. Add reps, do more with the same weight. Add sets, more total volume in the session.
Improve execution, same weight, but with stricter form, more control, and better range of motion.
Reduce rest, same work in less time, increasing density. Here's the part people miss. Overload has to be gradual. If you jump too fast, you either burn out or start cheating your form to hit numbers you're not ready for. That's not overload, that's survival mode. True overload is sneaky. It's that extra rep at the end of a set when your brain says, we've done enough. And your biceps say, yeah, but what if we didn't? It's adding 5 pounds to the bar and still moving it cleanly, not turning your curl into a hip thrust just to say you went heavier. And here's where it gets interesting. Progressive overload is not optional. If you want fast arm growth, you can have the perfect exercise selection, the best form in the gym, and you'll still plateau if you're lifting the same weights for the same reps month after month. Muscles are lazy. They adapt to whatever workload you give them. If that workload never changes, neither will they. This is why so many people look exactly the same year after year despite working hard. They're working, sure, just not harder than they used to. Let's break it down with a real-world example. Say you can do barbell curls with 60 pounds for 3 sets of 10 with perfect form. Great. Now your job is simple. Make that 60 pounds for 10 reps feel easy. Once it does, add a little weight, maybe just 2.5 pounds on each side, and work your way up again. Or keep the 60 and push to 12 reps, then 13, then 14 before bumping the weight. The goal isn't to show off on Instagram. It's to accumulate small, boring, consistent wins until your arms are undeniably bigger. And here's the kicker. The improvement has to be earned. If you add weight but lose range of motion, you didn't progress, you cheated. If you added a rep but only because you bounced the bar up using momentum, congratulations, you just trained your hips again. Progressive overload works only if the quality of your reps stays the same or gets better. This is why the best lifters are borderline obsessive about tracking their workouts. They know exactly what they did last time, so they can beat it by just enough to matter without turning their set into a circus act. Now you might be thinking, but isn't going heavier eventually going to make my form break down? Yes. If you're impatient, the trick is to push the progression just slowly enough that your body has time to adapt. That's why you see lifters adding a couple pounds every few weeks instead of 10 pounds every session. This is the tortoise and the hare situation. The hare burns out, the tortoise wins, and in the gym, the tortoise has way bigger arms. And let's not forget recovery. You can't overload week after week if you're not sleeping enough, eating enough protein, or taking rest days. Muscles don't grow when you're curling. They grow when you're recovering from curling. If you keep trying to overload without giving your body the raw materials to rebuild, all you'll overload is your fatigue levels. Another underrated overload tool is improving mind-muscle connection. If you curl the same 40 pounds for the same 12 reps, but now every rep burns because you're actually using the biceps and not the shoulders, that's overload in disguise. You're doing more effective work with the same load. Same thing with slowing the eccentric down. A 3-second negative with the same weight is absolutely harder than a 1-second drop. So here's the reality. Progressive overload is the quiet work behind the big arms. It's not flashy, it's not instant, but it's the reason you'll be filling out your sleeves in 6 months while the go hard or go home guy is still stuck in the same hoodie. All you have to do is pick a starting point, track it, and beat it in some small way every time you train. That's it. Not every week will feel like a PR day. Sometimes you'll just match your best numbers. And that's fine as long as the overall trend is moving upward over time. Because muscles don't respond to motivation, they respond to measurable work that keeps increasing. So next time you're tempted to just do whatever feels good in the gym, remember, feelings don't grow muscle. Progressive overload does. And if you give your biceps and triceps no choice but to adapt, they will. Reluctantly at first, then aggressively, until one day you wake up and realize you're not the person wondering how to grow your arms anymore. You're the person everyone's asking. Here's the thing nobody wants to hear. If you want big arms fast, you've got to give them enough work. Not some work, not whatever I felt like that day, but enough volume to actually force growth. Your arms aren't going to explode in size because you did a few sets of curls at the end of chest day and called it arm training. That's like throwing a single piece of lettuce on a burger and calling it a salad. Technically, yes, but nutritionally, yeah, you need targeted, consistent, high-quality volume. Now, when I say volume, I'm talking about the total amount of work your biceps and triceps get, the number of hard sets per week multiplied by the quality of those sets. And here's the sciencey truth. Most people need somewhere around 10-20 hard sets per muscle per week to grow optimally. Not junk sets where you kind of go through the motions, but real working sets that bring you within a rep or two of technical failure. That's the difference between doing volume and doing volume. Let's say you want those arms to actually change size in the next couple of months. For biceps, you might hit 3-4 sets of 3 different exercises twice a week. That's around 18-24 sets per week, right in the sweet spot for most lifters. Same for triceps, and before you start panicking that it's too much. Remember, the arm muscles are relatively small, recover pretty quickly, and can handle more frequency than your bigger muscle groups, which means you can blast them twice a week without frying your nervous system or tanking your squat. The key is balance. You want enough volume to stimulate growth, but not so much that you can't recover before the next session. If your arms still feel like raw meat 4 days later, you probably overdid it. And if you finish your arm day feeling like you just did a light warm-up, yeah, you underdid it. The sweet spot is where you feel worked, maybe a little sore, but still capable of performing again within 2-3 days. That's a sign your recovery and stimulus are in sync. Now here's where people mess this up. They'll do tons of junk volume, too many light sets, far from failure. Or they'll load up exercises that don't even target the biceps and triceps directly and count that as arm training. That's like counting walking to the fridge as cardio. Sure, you moved, but did you really stress the system? No. Every set you count toward your volume should be a high-quality, hard set that makes the target muscle work. And yes, quality matters more than sheer quantity. 10 great sets will beat 20 lazy ones every time. Great sets mean full range of motion, controlled tempo, and reps pushed close enough to failure that you could maybe do one more if someone offered you $1 million, but not much more than that. You have to get uncomfortable. If you finish every set thinking, that was pretty easy, guess what? Your muscles agree and your sleeves will continue to agree because they won't get tighter. Frequency is the other half of the volume equation. If you cram all 20 sets into one marathon arm day, you're going to hit a wall halfway through. Your performance will tank and half those sets will be subpar. Instead, spread the volume across 2 sessions, maybe biceps and triceps together, twice a week, or one focus day and one arms plus another muscle day. This way, each set is done while you're fresh enough to actually make it count. And don't forget, arms don't just work during arm-specific exercises. They get hit indirectly on chest, back, and shoulder days too. Heavy pressing lights up the triceps and pulling movements hammer the biceps. That means if you're already doing a lot of compound work, you might not need as much direct isolation volume as someone who trains arms in total isolation. But if you want arms that really stand out, direct work is non-negotiable. Indirect work is the appetizer. Isolation work is the main course. Here's the big takeaway. Volume is the dose that drives the adaptation. Too little, and you get nothing. Too much, and you can't recover. Just right, and you grow. And just right is different for everyone. Some people grow like weeds on 12 sets a week. Others need 18. The only way to know is to track what you're doing and adjust based on your progress. Are your lifts going up? Are your arms getting measurably bigger over months? Great. If not, you might need more volume, or you might be doing too much and need to recover better. And please stop fearing volume because you're worried about overtraining. True overtraining, the kind that wrecks your performance for months, is so rare that most people will never come close to it. What you should be more afraid of is undertraining, which is extremely common and explains why most arms in the gym look exactly the same year after year. So here's the prescription. Pick 2-3 solid biceps movements and 2-3 triceps movements. Hit each for 3-4 sets twice a week, pushing every set close to failure with great form. Track it, add weight, reps, or sets over time. That's your progressive overload. Keep eating enough to grow, sleeping enough to recover, and let the process do its thing. Do that for 3 months and then try on the same shirt you're wearing right now. If you can't tell a difference, I'll eat my lifting belt. But I'm telling you, because enough good volume applied consistently is the fastest, most reliable way to turn pretty good arms into holy crap, what happened to you arms.